Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he taught me. Just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say anymore, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way, and I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments. I have that has opened up many curious natures to me, and also made me the victim of a lot of bedroom bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person, and so it can but in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician, because I was privy to the secret grace of what? No man. Most of the confidences were such. Frequently I feigned sleep, preoccupation, or hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually pleasuristic and marred by obvious depression. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I'm still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested. And a snobbish relief Peter's sense of the fundamental decencies is partially apart. And after busting this way on my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Nuts may be found on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be uniform, and that deserve more attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. His personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, and there was something gorgeous about him. Some heightened sensitivity to promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with a flabby imperishability which is dignified under the name of the craggy temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, or many writings such as I have never found in any other person, and which it is not likely I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right at the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby. Wildfire thus floated from the wake of streams that temporarily closed down my interest in the very source and short-lived nations of men. My family have been prominent, but the people in this Midwestern city for 3 generations. The Caraways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition that we are descended from the Dukes of Buccleuch. But the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother who came here in 51, sent a substitute to the Civil War, and started the wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. I never thought his great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him, with special reference to the rather hard-boiled painting that hangs in father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915, just a quarter of a century after my father, and a little later I participated in the late tawny migration known as the Great War. I enjoyed the kind of race so thoroughly that I can be restless. Instead of being the warm center of the world, the Midwest now seemed like the ragged edge of the universe. So I decided to go east and learn the bomb business. Everybody I knew was in the bomb business, so I suppose it could some for almost single man. All my aunts and uncles talked it over as if they were choosing a practical for me, and I finally said, "Why?" "Yes," with very grave, hesitant faces. Father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays, I came east. Permanently, I thought, in the spring of 22. The practical thing was to find rooms in the city, but it was a warm season, and I had just left a country of wet lawns and friendly trees. So when a young man at the office suggested that we take a house together in the coming town, it sounded like a great idea. We found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow 80 a month. But at the last minute, the farmer ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had a dog. At least I had him for a few days until he ran away. And an old Dutch and a Finnish woman who made my bed and cooked breakfast and muttered Finnish wisdom to herself over the electric stove. It was only 4 days or so until one morning some man, more recently arrived than I, stopped me on the road. "How do you get to Essex Village?" he asked helplessly. I told him, and as I walked on, I was lonely no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder, an original settler. He had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. And so, with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves growing on the trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had a familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer. There was so much to read for one thing, and so much fine hell to pull down out of the unbreathing air. I bought a dozen volumes on banking and credit and investment securities, and they stood on my shelf in red and gold like new money from the mint, promising to unfold the shining secrets that only Midas and Morgan and Stannis knew. And I had the high intention of bringing many other bills besides. I was literally in college. One year, I wrote a series of very solemn and obvious editorials for the Yale News. And now I was going to bring back all such things into my life and become again that most limited of all specialists, the Veronic man. This isn't just an epigram. Life is much more successfully looked at from a single window, after all. It was a matter of chance that I should rent the house in one of the strangest communities in North America. It was on that slender, righteous island which extends itself due east of New York, and there are, among other natural curiosities, two unusual formations of land. 20 miles from the city of pair of enormous eggs, identical in contour, and separated only by a coarse bay, jut out into the west. It jut out into the most domesticated body of salt water in the Western Hemisphere, the Great Wet Barnyard of Line and Sound. They are not perfect doubles. Like the egg in the Columbus story, they are both crushed flat at the contact end. But their physical resemblance must be a source of perpetual confusion to the ghosts that fly overhead. To the linguist, a more arresting phenomenon is their dissimilarity in every particular except shape and size. I lived at West Egg, the less fashionable of the two, though this is a most superficial tact to express the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them. My house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the sound, and squeezed between two huge places that rented for 12 or 15,000 a season. The one on my right was a colossal affair by any standard. It was a factual imitation of someone had V Normandy, with a tower on one side, spanking you on the thin beard of ivy, and, and a marble swimming pool, and more than 40 acres lawn and garden. It was Gatsby's mansion. Rather, as I didn't know Mr. Gatsby, it was mentioned inhabited by a gentleman of the name. My own house was at the very tip of the egg, but my own house was an eyesore, but a small eyesore, and it had been overlooked. So I had a view of the water, a partial view of my neighbor's lawn, and the constant proximity of millionaires. All for $80 a month. Across the Corsi Bay, the white palaces of fashionable East Deck glittered along the water. And the history of the summer really begins on the evening I drove over there to have dinner with the Tom Buchanans. Daisy was my second cousin, once removed, and I'd known Tom in college. And just after the war, I spent 2 days with them in Chicago. Her husband, among various physical accomplishments, had been one of the most powerful ants ever played football in New Haven. A natural figure in a way. One of those men who reached such an acutely limited excellence at 21 that everything afterward savors of anticlimax. His family were enormously wealthy. Even in college, his freedom with money was matter for reproach. But now he left Chicago, and calm eased in a way that rather took your breath away. For instance, he brought down a song, sing, For instance, he brought down a string of hollow ponies from Lake Forest. It was hard to realize that a man in my ge- It was hard to realize that a man in my own generation was enough was healthy enough to do that. Why they came east, I don't know. They had spent a year in France for no particular reason, and then drifted here and there unrestfully wherever people played polo and were rich together. This was a permanent move, said Daisy over the telephone, but I didn't believe it. I had no sight into Daisy's heart, but I felt that Tom would second drifting a little wistfully for the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable fucking. And so it happened that on a warm windy evening, I drove over to East Egg to see two old friends Masquez knew at all. Their house was even more elaborate than I expected. A cheerful red and white Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay. The lawn started at the beach and ran toward the front door for a quarter of a mile, jumping over sundials and brick walks in burning gardens. Finally, when you reached the house, drifting up the side in bright vines edged up from the momentum of its tramp. The front was broken by a line of Frenchy windows, low enough we reflected gold, and wide open to the warm in the afternoon. And Tom Buchanan, in riding clothes, was standing with his legs apart on the front porch. He had changed since his New Haven years. Now, he was a sturdy, straw-haired man of 30, with a rather hard mouth and a supercilious manner. Two shining, arrogant eyes had established dominance over his face and gave him the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. Not even the feminist swank of his riding clothes could hide the enormous power of the body. He seemed to feel the glistening boots until it strained the top lacing, and you could see a great peck of muscle shifting when his shoulder moves under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage, a curved body. His speaking voice, a gruff, husky tenor, added to the impression of fractiousness he conveyed. There was a touch of paternal contempt in it. Even taller people he liked, and there were men at New Haven who had hated his guts. Now, don't think my opinion on this matter is final, he seemed to say, just because I'm stronger and more of a man than you are. We were in the same senior society, and while we were never intimate, I always had the impression that he approved of me and wanted me to like him with some harsh, defiant wistfulness of his own. We talked for a few minutes on the sunny porch. I've got a nice place here, he said, his eyes flashing about restlessly. Turning me around by one arm, he moved a rough-flat hand along the front vista, including in its sweep a sunken Italian garden. A half-acre of deep, hardy roses, and a snub-nosed motorboat that bumped the tide offshore. It belonged to the man, the oil man. He turned me around again, politely and abruptly. We go inside. We walked through a high hallway into a bright rosy corner space, fragilely bound into the house by French windows at either end. The windows were ajar and gleaming white against the freshly grass outside that seemed to grow a little way into the house. A breeze blew through the room, blue colors in at one end and out the other like pale flecks, twisting them out toward the frosty wedding cake of the ceiling, and then rippled over the wine-carved rug, making a shadow on it like wind does on the sea. The only completely stationary object in the room was an enormous couch on which two young women were buoyed up as upon an accord balloon. They were both in white, and their dresses were rippling and fluttering as if they had just been blown back in after a shuffle around the house. I must have stood for a few minutes listening to the whip and snap of the curtains and the grunt of a pitch on the wall. Then there was a boom as Tom Buchanan shut the rear windows, and the cold wind died out about the room, and the curtains and the rugs and the two young women balanced slowly to the floor. The younger of the two was a stranger to me. She was extended full length at either end of the divan, completely motionless, and with her chin raised a little, as if she were balancing something on it, which was quite likely to fall. She saw me out of the corner of her eyes. She saw me out of the corner of her eyes. She gave no hint of it. Indeed, I was almost surprised into murmuring an apology for having disturbed her by coming in. The other girl, Daisy, made an attempt to rise. She leaned slightly forward with a conscious expression. Then she laughed, an absurd, charming little laugh. And I laughed too and came forward into the room. I'm paralyzed with happiness. She laughed again, as if she sensed something very witty, and held my hand for a moment, looking up into my face. Promised that there was no one in the world she so much wanted to see. That was the way she had. She hinted in a murmur that it's only one of the balancing girls make her. I've already said that Daisy's warmer was only to make people lean harder on irrelevant criticism that made it less charming. At any rate, Miss Baker's lips fluttered. She nodded at me almost imperceptibly, and then quickly tipped her head back again. The object she was balancing had obviously told her little, and given her something of a fright. Again, a sour apology rose to my lips. Almost an exhibition of complete self-sufficiency drew a stunned tribute from me. I looked back at my cousin and began to ask me a question in a low, thrilling voice. It was the kind of voice that the ear follows up and down as if each speech is an arrangement of notes that will never be played again. Her face was set and lovely with bright things in it, bright eyes and bright passionate mouth. But there was an excitement in her voice that men who had cared for her found difficult to forget. A thin composure, always for to listen. I promised that she had done gay. Exciting things, just a while. Since at that they were gay. Exciting things over in the next hour. I told her how I stopped off in Chicago for a day on my way east. And now a dozen people had sent their love for me. They miss me, she cried ecstatically. The whole town is desolate. All the cars have the left rear wheel painted black as a mourning wreath. And there is a persistent wail, all night along the North Shore. How gorgeous. Let's go back town tomorrow. And she added irrelevantly, gotta see the baby. I like to. She's asleep. She's 3 years old. Haven't you ever seen her? Never. Well, you gotta see her. She's... Tom Buchanan, who had been hovering restlessly about the room, stopped and rested his hand on my shoulder. What you doing, Nick? I'm a bug man. Poet, I told him. Never heard of them, he remarked decisively. This annoyed me. You will, I answered shortly. You will if you stand east. Oh, I'll stand east, don't you worry, he said, glancing at Daisy and then back at me, as if he were alert for something more. I'd be a goddamn fool to live anywhere else. At this point, Miss Baker said absolutely, with such suddenness that I started. It was the first water she uttered since I came into the room. Evidently it surprised her as much as it did me, for she yawned and with a series of rapid, dead looks, stood up into the room. I'm safe, she complained. I've been lying on the sofa for as long as I can remember. Don't look at me, Daisy retorted. I've been trying to get to New York all afternoon. No thanks, said Miss Baker, the 4 cocktails just in from the pantry. I'm absolutely in training. Her host looked at her incredulously. You are. He took down his drink as if it were a drop in the bottom of a glass. How you ever get anything done is beyond me. I looked at Miss Baker, wondering what it was she got done. I enjoyed looking at her. She was a slender, small-breasted girl with an erect carriage, which she accentuated by throwing her body backward at the shoulders like a young cat. Her gray, sun-strained eyes looked back at me with polite, reciprocal curiosity out of a wane, charming its contented face. It occurred to me now that I had seen her, or a picture of her, somewhere before. You live in West End, she remarked contemptuously. I know somebody there. I don't know a single. You must know Gatsby. Gatsby? Mended Daisy. What Gatsby? Before I could reply that he was my neighbor, dinner was announced. Wetting his tense arm imperatively under mine, Tom Buchanan compelled me from the room, as though he were moving a checker to another square. Splinterly, languidly, their hands sit lightly on their hips, the 2 young women preceded us out onto a rosy-colored space. The rosy-colored porch opened toward the sunset, where 4 candles flickered on the table in the diminished wind. Why candles? Objected Daisy, frowning. She snapped them out with her fingers. In 2 weeks, if the longest day in the year, she looked at us obediently. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day in the year and then miss it. We are out of playing something, yawned Miss Baker, sitting down at the table as if she were getting into bed. All right, said Daisy. What we playing? She turned to me helplessly. What do people play? Before I could answer, her eyes fastened with an odd expression on her little finger. Look, she complained. I heard it. We all looked. The knuckle was black and blue. You did it, Tom, she said accusingly. I know you didn't mean to, but you did do it. That's what I get for marrying a brute of a man. A great big hulking physical specimen of a... I hate the word hulking, objected Tom crossly. Even kidding. Hulking, insisted Daisy. Sometimes she and Miss Baker talked at once, unobtrusively, and later bantering in consequence because there was never quite chatter. That was as cool as their white dresses and their impersonal eyes in the absence of a desire. They were here, and they accepted Tom and me, making only a polite, pleasant effort to entertain or to be entertained. They knew that presently dinner would be over, and a little later the evening too would be over, and casually put away. It was sharply different from the West, where an evening was hurried from face to face toward its close. In a continually disappointed anticipation, or else in sheer nervous dread of the moment itself. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy, I confessed on my second glass of corky, by a rather impressive coolery. Can't you talk about crops or something? I meant nothing in particular by this remark, but it was taken up in an unexpected way. Civilization is going to pieces, broke out Tom violently. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by this man Goddard? Why, no, I answered, rather surprised by his tone. Well, it's a fine book, and everybody ought to read. The idea is, if we don't look out, the white trees will be utterly submerged. It's all scientific stuff. It's been proved. Tom's getting very profound, said Daisy, with an expression of undoubtful sadness. Here is deep books with long words in them. What was that word we? Well, these books are all scientific. insisted Tom, glancing at her impatiently. This fella has worked out the whole thing. It's up to us who are the dominant race to watch out, or these other races will have control of things. We've got to beat them down, whispered Daisy, looking cautiously toward the farmer's son. You ought to live in California, began Miss Baker, but Tom interrupted her by shifting heavily in his chair. This idea is that we are Nordics. I am, and you are, and after an infinitesimal hesitation, Tom included, and she included Daisy with a slight note, and she winked at me again. When, almost immediately, the telephone rang inside and the butler left the porch. Daisy seized upon the momentary interruption and leaned toward me. I'll tell you a family secret, she whispered enthusiastically. It's about the burglar's news. Do you want to hear about the burglar's news? That's why I came over tonight. Well, he wasn't always a butler. He used to be the civil polisher for some people in New York that had a civil service for 200 people. He had to polish it from morning to night until finally he began to affect his nose. Things went from bad to worse, suggested Miss Baker. Yes, things went from bad to worse until finally he had to give up his position. For a moment, the last sunshine fell with romantic affection upon her glowing face. Her voice conveniently forward restlessly as I listened. Then the glow faded, its light deserting her with lingering regret, like children leaving a pleasant street at dusk. The butler came back and murmured something close to Tom's ear, upon Tom frowned, pushed back his chair, and without a word went inside. As if his absence quickened something within her, Daisy leaned forward again. I love to see them at table, Nick. You remind me of a rose, an absolute rose, doesn't he? She turned to Miss Baker for confirmation. An absolute rose? This was untrue. I'm not even faintly like a rose. She was only extemporizing, but a starring warmth flowed from her, as if her heart was trying to come out to you, concealed in one of those breathless, thrilling wars. Then suddenly she threw her napkin on the table and excused herself, and went into the house. Miss Baker and I exchanged a short glance consciously, devoid of meaning. I was about to speak when she sat up alertly and said, "Shh," in a warning voice. The subdued, impassioned murmur was audible in the room beyond, and Miss Baker leaned forward, unashamed, trying to hear. The murmur trembled on the verge of coherence, sank down, mounted excitedly, and ceased altogether. This Mr. Gatsby is my neighbor, I said. Don't talk. I want to hear what happens. Is something happening? I inquired innocently. You mean to say you don't know? Said Miss Baker, honestly surprised. I thought everybody knew. I don't. Why? She said hastily. Tom's got some woman in New York. Got some woman? I repeated blankly. Miss Baker nodded. She might have the decency not to telephone it at dinner time, don't you think? Almost before I had grasped her meaning, there was the flutter of a dress and the crunch of leather boots, and Tom and Daisy were back at the table. It couldn't be helped, cried Daisy with tense gaiety. She sat down, glanced searchingly at Miss Baker and then at me, and continued. I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There's a bird in the lawn that I think must be a nightingale come over on the Cunard or West Side line. He's singing away, her voice sang. It's romantic, isn't it, Tom? Very romantic, he said, and then miserably to me. If it is lighting up after dinner, I want to take you down to the stables. The telephone rang inside. Startlingly, and as Daisy shook her head decisively at Tom, the subject of the tables, in fact all subjects, vanished into air. Among the broken fragments of the last 5 minutes at table, I remember the candles being lit again, pointlessly, and I was conscious of wanting to look squarely at everyone, and yet to avoid all eyes. I couldn't guess what Daisy and Tom were thinking, but I thought if even Miss Baker, who seemed to have mastered a certain hearty skepticism, was able utterly to put this fifth guest through mental urgency out of mind. To a certain temperament, the situation might have seemed intriguing. My only instinct was to telephone immediately for the police. The horses, needless to say, were not mentioned again. Tom and Miss Baker, with several feet of twilight between them, strolled back into the library, as if to a vigil beside a perfectly tangible body. While trying to look pleasantly interested, and a little deaf, I followed Daisy around a chain of connecting verandas to the porch in front. In steep gloom, we sat down side by side on a wicker settee. Daisy took her face in her hands, as if feeling its lovely shape, and her eyes moved gradually out into the velvet dusk. I saw that I saw that turbulent emotions possessed her. So I asked what I thought would be some steady questions about her little girl. We don't know each other very well, Nick, she said suddenly. Even if we are cousins, you didn't come to my wedding. I wasn't back from the war. That's true, she hesitated. Well, I've had a very bad time, Nick, and I'm pretty cynical about everything. Evidently, she had reason to be. I waited, and she didn't say any more. I waited, but she didn't say any more. And after a moment, I returned rather feebly to the subject of our daughter. As well, she talks and eats and everything. Oh, yes, she looked at me absolutely. Listen, Nick, let me tell you what I said when she was born. Would you like to hear? Very much. It'll show you how I've got to feel about things. Well, she was less than an hour old, and Tom was gonna swear. I woke up out of the ether with an utterly abandoned feeling, and asked the nurse right away if it was a boy or a girl. She told me it was a girl. And still, I turned my head away and wept. All right, I said. I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A beautiful little fool. You see, I think everything's terrible anyhow, she went on in a convinced way. Everybody thinks so, the most advanced people. And I know. I've been everywhere and seen everything, and done everything. Her eyes flashed around her in a defiant way, rather like Tom's, and she laughed with a thrilling scorn. Sophisticated? God, I'm sophisticated. The instant her voice broke up, ceasing to compel my attention, my belief, I felt the basic insincerity of what she had said. It made me uneasy, as though the whole evening had been a trick of some sort to exact a contributory emotion from me. I waited, and sure enough, in a moment, she looked. In a moment, she looked back at me with an absolute smirk on her lovely face, as if she were, as if she had necessarily her membership in a rather distinguished secret society to which she and Tom belonged. Inside, the crimson room bloomed with light. Tom and Miss Becker sat at either end of the long couch, and she read aloud to him from the letters from the Saturday Evening Post. The words, murmurs, and uninflected, running together in a soothing tune. The lamplight, bright on his boots and dull on the autumn yellow of her hair, lay along the paper as she turned the page. With a flutter of central muscles in her arms, when we came in, she held the silent for a moment with a lifted hand. To be continued, she said, tossing the magazine on the table. In our very next issue. Her body asserted itself with a restless movement of her knee, and she stood up. 10 o'clock, she remarked, apparently finding time on the ceiling. Time for this good girl to go to bed. Jordan's going to play in the tournament tomorrow, explained Daisy, over at Westchester. Oh, you're Jordan Baker. I knew now why her face was familiar. Its pleasing contemptuous expression had looked out at me from many rotogravy features of the sporting life at Asheville and Hot Springs and Palm Beach. I had heard some story about her too. A critical, unpleasant story. But what it was, I had forgotten long ago. Good night, she said softly. Wake me at 8, won't you? If you get up. I will. Good night, Mr. Carraway, she announced. Of course you will, confirmed Daisy. In fact, I think I'll arrange a marriage. Come over often, Nick. And I sort of, lock up accidentally in the linen closets and push out the sea in a boat, and all that sort of thing. Good night, called Miss Baker from the stairs. I haven't heard a word. She's a nice girl, said Tom after a moment. They oughtn't to let her run around the country this way. Who oughtn't to? Her family. Her family is one aunt about 1,000 years old. Besides, Nick's going to look after her, aren't you, Nick? She's got to spend lots of weekends out here this summer. I think the home influence will be very good for her. Daisy and Tom looked at each other for a moment in silence. Is she from New York? I asked quickly. From Louisville. Our white girlhood was passed together there. Our beautiful white. Did you give Nick a little heart-to-heart talk on the veranda? Demanded Tom suddenly. Did I? She looked at me. I can't seem to remember, but I think we talked about the Nordic freeze. Yes, I'm sure we did. It sort of crept up on us, and first thing you know, don't believe everything you hear, Nick, he advised me. I said lightly that I had not heard nothing at all. And a few minutes later, I got up to go home. They came to the door with me and stood side by side in a cheerful square of light. When I saw her in my more, Daisy promptly called, Wait. I forgot to ask you something, and it's important. We heard you were engaged to a girl out west. That's right, corroborated Tom kindly. We heard that you were engaged. It's libel. I'm too poor. But we heard it. It's just a daisy. Surprised me by opening up again in a flower-like way. We heard it from three people, so it must be true. Of course I knew what they were referring to, but I wasn't even vaguely engaged. The fact that Gossip had published the banns was one of the reasons I had commenced. You can stop going with an old friend on account of rumors, and on the other hand, I had no intention of being rumored into marriage. Their interest rather touched me and made them less remotely rich. Nevertheless, I was confused and a little disgusted as I drove away. It seemed to me that the thing for Daisy to do was to rush out of the house, turn it off. But apparently there were no such intentions in her head. As for Tom, the fact that he had some woman in New York was really less surprising than that he had been depressed by a book. Something something was making nibble at the edge of stale ideas, as if his sturdy physical egotism no longer nourished his peremptory heart. Already it was this summer on roadway houses. Already it was this summer on roadhouse roofs and in front of wayside garages, where new red gas pumps set out in pools of light. And when I reached my estate at West Egg, I ran the car under its shed and sat for a while on an abandoned grass roller in the yard. The wind had blown up, leaving a loud bright night with wings beating in the trees, and a persistent organ sound as the full bellows of the earth blew the frogs full of life. The silhouette of a moving cat vapored across the moonlight, and turning my head to watch it, I saw that I was not alone. 50 feet away, a figure had emerged from the shadow of my neighbor's mansion, and with his hands in his pockets, regarding the second paper of the stars. Something in his leisurely movements and the secure position of his feet upon the lawn suggested that it was Mr. Gatsby himself, come out to determine what share was his of our local heavens. I decided to go to him. Miss Baker had mentioned him at dinner, and that would do for introduction. But I didn't call to him, for he gave a sudden intimation that he was content to be alone. He stretched out his arms toward the dark water in a curious way, and far as I was from him, I could have sworn he was trembling. Involuntarily, I glanced seaward, and distinguished nothing except a single green light. Mute and far away. That might have been the end of a dock. When I looked once more for Gatsby, he had vanished, and I was alone again in the unquiet darkness.